Good evening, everybody. Hi, I'm Gord. I'm your city councillor for Parkdale High Park Ward 4. And tonight we're co-hosting a town hall on plastics. Before I go any further, though, I wanted to acknowledge that while we're here virtually and in many locations, the land we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. Parkdale High Park is blessed with one of the most active and engaged community groups on the environment anywhere in the city of Toronto. I'm talking about Green 13. And Green 13 has, I'm in regular contact with them, and they suggested that we need to have a town hall, a discussion about what we do with some of the solid waste that we're generating. Both because with all the deliveries taking place, it's becoming more apparent than ever that the way we manage packaging and plastics in particular is not always been a problem, but is becoming a larger problem. And also, despite the fact that we're mired in an absolutely dreadful public health crisis with COVID-19, the fundamental issues about how we live sustainably in the city of Toronto and on the planet aren't going away. And we have to continue the work on them and start to build systems so that as our economy restarts, we do so in a more sustainable way. So thanks particularly to Debbie, Marianne, Anita, and Grace Ann, who've been so diligent in this work for years, but also really were the impetus for the town hall that we are having here tonight. The format we're going to follow is we're going to get a few wise words from my good friend Emily Alfred to start us off. And then we have a panel with a range of interests and expertise who are going to sort of lead a discussion amongst ourselves. We also have a couple of city staff who will join later on. And then we'll throw it open for a question and answer period so that we can really get a feel for your lived experience of trying to manage plastics, your hopes, your ambitions, your great ideas. And maybe out of this, we can come up with both some changes we can make in our own lives, maybe some things that can happen between businesses and customers and within businesses, but also some policy ideas for the city of Toronto and maybe beyond. So with that, I'm going to ask Emily to lead us off with sort of a lay of the land discussion. And now, just by way of introduction, for about 10 years when I was much younger, I was the solid waste campaigner at the Toronto Environmental Alliance. And well, frankly, I didn't get the city of Toronto to do very much, but Emily has been much more successful since she took over that role, leading with a whole lot of very important waste reduction initiatives, diversion initiatives, particularly in multi-unit dwellings, and is somebody I will tell you that everyone on city council listens to for advice on what to do with waste management. So Emily, over to you.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for that very kind intro, Gord. I have to say I had big shoes to fill. I was very excited to follow in your footsteps on waste. And still many people talk about your great work on waste, so don't sell yourself short. I'm really happy to be here talking about waste today. It's a pretty exciting topic for me, and I'm excited that a lot of people want to spend their evening talking about waste and waste policy. I've got a little bit of a presentation, so I'm just going to share my screen and let's see if this works. So can you all see that? Great. Okay. So We're here today to talk about single-use plastics. I think all of us are really familiar with some of the most disturbing and grim statistics about, truckloads of plastics entering the world's oceans every minute, and thousands of tons of plastics entering our freshwater Great Lakes every year. And studies showing that plastics are in our water and our soil and our air and now in our bodies. And, now more than ever, we're all confronted with packaging and plastic every day at home as we're getting more and more packaging from spending more time at home. And also, I want to talk about the fact that while a lot of our conversations about plastics are about plastic pollution and where plastic ends up, we also need to think about plastic as a climate change issue, because plastics are made of fossil fuels. So when we're drilling for oil or expanding pipelines or fracking for natural gas, that's all done to make plastic. And those plastics and oil companies are planning to expand and make more plastics and more packaging for us to consume. This has really harmful effects on the environment, but it's really important we also remember it has really harmful effects on the communities near these facilities. And that's both upstream and downstream. When we're done with these plastic materials, we spend a lot of energy and time collecting and sorting them to send them to a landfill or an incinerator or overseas for recycling, which may not always happen. And the fact is we're really at an unsustainable point of consumption, and we really need to think about dramatic system change to deal with all these plastics. So we're talking about packaging and single-use plastics. So these are things that were designed to be used once, to deliver a product to us, to get us to buy more things, and to be used once and then thrown away. So that's about 50% of the plastics produced in Canada every year are for packaging and single-use products. Increasingly, this packaging is more complicated. It's got more layers, more different types of plastics, and it's not recyclable. So we need pretty big solutions. And of course, the 3 R's is a really good sort of reminder that we really need to focus on reducing, reusing, and recycling. So we need to think about preventing plastics in the first place. So eliminating the plastics that we don't need, especially single-use plastics when there are ready alternatives. We need to look at reusable and durable options, making sure that what we create, it can last longer and can be repaired. And for everything else, as a last resort, we need to look at recycling. And that means we need reliable recycling systems where we can trust that what we're putting in the recycling bin is getting recycled. And if materials can't be recycled and they can't be turned into new valuable products, we should ban them and redesign them out of the system. So this kind of massive systems change is going to need work at all levels of all levels of government in Canada. So I'm going to talk about what's happening at the different levels of government. So right now, you've probably heard about a federal plastic strategy. A few years ago, the federal government announced that it was going to get serious about single-use plastics, and included in that was a series of activities to promote better recycling in Canada and look at different ways of managing plastics. But most importantly, and I think most excitingly for us, is the idea of banning certain single-use items. So the federal government has announced that it will be moving forward at some point soon, we haven't heard the final details, on banning 6 single-use plastic items. That's plastic bags, stir sticks, 6-pack rings, plastic utensils, some types of foodware like styrofoam or black plastic that are difficult or impossible to recycle, and plastic straws. And these things were chosen because they've already been banned and phased out in other jurisdictions like the European Union, and because there are ready alternatives. So this is really great to have this sort of federal leadership and have consistency across the country. But it's just the beginning. There's a lot more than 6 things that we need to address. At the provincial level, the Ontario government is responsible for recycling regulations and sort of setting the rules for who has to recycle and who pays for it. So right now, Ontario is close to passing a new law that would shift how recycling happens, and it would make producers responsible. So this is the companies that sell products and packaging, that holding them responsible for ensuring that those materials get collected and get recycled. This would take the cost off municipalities, and if it's done well and they're required to provide proof of recycling, this could actually really shift the recycling system. So this is a really important step to really ensure that we have a more robust recycling system. And we'll be pushing to ensure that those rules are strict and enforceable, and that they include measures to also reduce and ban materials that aren't getting recycled. And then at the municipal level, the great news, some of you may remember, but a few years ago, the city really committed to looking at how to reduce single-use plastics in Toronto. And there was some great consultations, some public consultations, which had almost record-breaking turnout from the public with support for restrictions and regulations to restrict single-use takeaway foodware. So this is things like utensils, coffee cups, takeout containers, and plastic bags. There's a lot of overlap with what the federal government is talking about right now. And this would include, but notably, actually, the thing about the city policies was that they wouldn't be restricted just to plastics. They would also apply to all types of single-use containers, which I think from a waste perspective is the preferable approach, because we don't want people just to switch from plastics to another type of disposable container, because that's just sort of shifting the problem to another stream. So the city's draft regulations were talking about, ask first. So stores wouldn't just give out disposables. They might charge a fee to discourage use or banning certain things. And another policy that was discussed that we hope to hear more about in the future is requiring reusables for dining in. So when you'd go into a restaurant, you'd have to get reusable dishes. So this means you wouldn't go into a Tim Hortons cafe and get your cup or get your coffee in a disposable cup. It would have to be in a reusable container. So this is the kind of regulation we've actually seen in other municipalities, and I think it's a really big way forward. So those are some of the examples. Obviously, the City of Toronto's work on this has slowed for good reasons. It's been paused as we've really dealt with other urgent issues right now in Toronto. But I think the next steps, I think we should feel confident that the city is committed to this, and we need to keep showing that the public wants action on single-use containers. So that's my quick presentation for now, just to give sort of the lay of the land on some of the different policy activities that are happening, because I think that the biggest conclusion I want to make here is that all three levels of government have been talking about taking action on plastics and waste, and that's because they've heard from the public that people care. And just this constant pressure is really making them feel like they need to do this.
Great. Thank you so much, Emily. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to, in turn, one at a time, introduce each of our great panelists tonight. We're really lucky to have an array of people from the community who have different windows into how this waste management and plastic stuff works. And then I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves and give us sort of their top of mind thought in just a couple of minutes. So I'm going to begin with Dipesh Shah. Dipesh is the owner of the Canary and Fox. And Dipesh, I'll let you tell us a little bit about why you're here tonight and your view on the problem.
Thanks, Councillor Perks. Yeah, so I'm the owner of a small business called Canary and Fox. We're a local grocery store / gift store. I think, and I may be a minority right now, but I think those regulations to ban single-use plastics can't come fast enough. I think it's important as a business owner. We do care. I have a 14-year-old son, and I think it's important to really limit and reduce our waste, because ultimately it's going to make a more sustainable world for all of us. To me, it makes economic sense for a brighter future. And I think one thing I just want to point out, while a lot of these convenient plastic packaging options that you find at some of the big box stores or many stores around in your neighborhood, we're not paying the true cost when we pick, a plastic tub of yogurt. The cleanup of our lakes, the healthcare costs, the cost to wildlife, natural, just to address the whole climate change. Those are all back-end costs that society as a large is paying through higher taxes, greater healthcare costs, cleanups. And I just want to say, as a small business owner, we think that needs to change. So, you know, I'm happy to say stores like us are growing in number. There's, I'm sure in Toronto now, at least a dozen or so stores like us. And we hope that the audience here and you know, everywhere in Toronto starts discovering that there are businesses that do care and there are options available, and small changes do make a collective greater difference.
Thanks, Depeche. So now I'm going to call on Tina Soldovieri. Tina is a founder of a really cool initiative in our community, Ronci Reduces. Tina, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, Ronci Reduces, and your top level thought?
Thank you. Yes, thank you very much for having me. I'm here as a member of Ronci Reduces, and we are a neighborhood group in the Roncesvalles area, and have a pretty basic concept. So the idea was to reduce single-use plastics in our neighborhood locally, together with neighbors and businesses, and inspire sort of both sides. So I'm really excited about what Depeche had to say, that people can learn, yes, there are options out there. And the way we did it is we created, you might have seen it, this sticker, and went around to businesses and asked them if they would be okay with supporting low waste solutions, such as bring your own bags, personal bags and containers, or coffee cups. And then people would see already at the window, okay, this is one of these stores where, or restaurants where I can do it. And that would encourage businesses to help customers to do this. And also the other way around, if there's a business that offers it, then maybe hesitant residents or consumers would say, oh yeah, I mean, if this is a possibility, I can try it out. So that was the idea, to have it locally, and it has actually spread to other neighborhoods, which is exciting. And we have recently launched a website for all the groups. It's a little network, has a very ambitious name. It's Canada Reduces. .ca, the website, but the website is there for the groups, but also for anyone who wants to start a group or who wants to look at resources about waste reduction. We try to keep it updated and inspire people and give them, yeah, whether it's a films or movies, or whether it's ideas what you can do. So that was one of our latest pandemic projects. Otherwise, the idea is really to open up more possibilities for both businesses and consumers to shop without waste, right? And that was definitely very, there was a big setback with the pandemic because of the fear of transmission. And right now, for us, most important is to spread the news that actually it is safe to BYO, to bring your own containers, to use reusables. The transmission is not of the virus doesn't go through containers and bags. It's through aerosols and droplets. And so it's very important to bring that plastic crisis back into focus, and to the focus that it deserves. And I thought, Emily, thank you for your really awesome overview of this problem, because it is so it's so local in every house and every home, but it's also so global that it's truly overwhelming. And I think a lot of local solutions are not the only solutions, definitely, but they help us all to go through this cultural change. So that's what we are about. And we, if anybody's interested, we always take new members. We meet on a monthly basis and have also a lot of fun together.
Thank you, Tina. I like the way you said that, right in our own home and also globally. Yeah, thank you for that. And our final panelist this evening, Adriana Kudo, has she's a co-founder of a really interesting app. And being over 50, I am allowed to say sort of app, like I'm a bit confused. And Adriana, why don't you tell us a little bit about Inwit and what you do and some of your top level thoughts on this issue.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And again, I'm really happy to be here. So thanks for including me. And excited to tell you about the app. We are an impact-driven startup that's working really hard to eliminate single-use takeout packaging. And what we're doing is we're providing a solution that's really good for you, for the community, and for the planet. And so we're launching a zero-waste food app, the first one of its kind in Toronto, that can support local restaurants who are looking to make a change, looking to produce a different outcome with their takeout. Ones that want to support local restaurants just without the waste. And so we're really excited to be piloting in Roncesvalles this month. And essentially you can enjoy low waste takeout in just 3 simple steps: order, pick up, and return. It's actually that simple. And so don't let the app scare you. It is a website app, so you can also go online and access it that way. But essentially the way it works is you can order ahead for a contactless pickup, receive your food in one of our beautiful stainless steel reusable containers, and then you have 1 week to return it to any participating location in the neighborhood. And there's even a reward program, so you can earn rewards for taking action, which then you can redeem for more delicious food. And so for us, this is a really important solution that we're bringing to the community. As everyone mentioned, small changes make a huge difference. And this is something that we do. We love our Toronto restaurants. They are the heart of every single community and every neighborhood across the city. And we want everyone to be able to support local whenever they want, as much as they want, just without the waste. Because we are producing over 1 billion single-use containers annually across Canada. And it's just not cutting it anymore, right? It's taking up vital resources, it's harming our ecosystems. So we are bringing the solution to the table so that we can hopefully eliminate waste together.
Thank you. I just want to say, when we drafted the agenda, we told all the panelists 2 minutes, and we built in extra time because we didn't believe people would actually stick to it, but we did. So well done, everybody. So what we're going to do now for the next 20 minutes or so is kind of have a roundtable discussion amongst the panelists. And then for the last half hour or so, we'll throw it open for questions and answers from all of you who are here tonight. But I wanted to start off, maybe I'll start by asking Emily, and anyone else can jump in on this. So Emily, one of the things I know that matters a lot is is the gap between the number of people who talk to me who say, I wish something would happen, and the amount of political heat my colleagues actually feel about this issue. And I'm wondering, like, if I'm, just going about my business and I'm mad that all these plastics are being disposed of and I want to see more reuse and better regulation, how do I go about that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's about a sort of a sustained ongoing pressure. And I think one of the great things about plastic that I sort of alluded to at the start, and I think a lot of us can relate to, is that everyone experiences it. So everyone knows what it feels like, and that includes elected representatives. Everyone knows what it feels like to have bits of plastic at home and not know, does this go in the recycling bin or not? Or why do I have this stupid container? I don't need 25 forks when I'm just taking this takeout food home to eat at home. So everyone can relate to that. So I think that's a real advantage we have. I'd encourage everyone to take that time to contact elected representatives. And I think a good tip for advocacy and for talking to elected officials, and Gord, you could confirm whether this is true or not, but people sometimes think that they need to be an expert. They think that if they're going to go talk to a committee or to a councillor or to an MPP or to an MP, they need to have all these facts about what's the problem with plastics and what's the solution. And you don't need to have those facts. You just need to tell them what you feel and what your experience is. And those personal experiences and stories are so powerful, and we can share them with elected reps, and we can participate in consultations, and we can talk to our families, and building just that sort of sense of people want change and we're supporting change. I think that really adds up over time. And of course, it's it's complicated when you have a councillor who clearly cares about single-use plastics. You don't need to worry about contacting councillors when they've already made their position very clear. But talk to your friends who live in other wards, or talk to your MPP, or if you have a business in a different ward, or if you have family in another ward, talk to them and say, let's talk to your councillor and find out what the problem is here. Because I think just that regular contact really adds up.
Any other thoughts from the panel? While you're thinking about that, I just want to make something clear. If you're phoning a politician, you are not phoning an expert. So like, you probably know more than I do when you phone me about something that you experience in your life. And I'm maybe going to contradict Emily a little bit here. Phoning people, even if they are already on your side and have said they're on your side, I'll tell you a fact of this stuff is you do triage, right? If you get 100 calls on something, you're going to deal with that first. If you get 2 calls on something, maybe a little bit later. If you get no calls on something, even if it's something you're passionate about, you get to that next week or the week after, or maybe never. So it's always worthwhile getting in touch. Maybe Adriana or Depeche or Tina, can talk to me a little bit about how we get a circular economy in the food services industry, and how that affects what you do and how you think about your business or your role as a consumer. Any thoughts from anyone?
Yeah, if I can just jump in there. So, yeah, so I agree with advocating for what people believe in, and certainly as a small business owner, we take our customers' feedback, and I love it. Some of it's doable, some of it's not, and I'm totally transparent. But one of the things that is important to us is that we, for example, if somebody comes into our store and says they're tired of all these plastic bottles, that's just added emphasis or added pressure on me to have those conversations with our suppliers. And I'll give you one example. So we right now carry zero waste ice cream. It's by a fantastic company in the Kitchener-Waterloo area. So it's even locally made. It comes in a glass jar, and it's no more expensive than some of the other ice creams we sell. But the beauty about it is, here's a company, here's a producer that gets it, puts their ice cream in a glass jar, and when our customers are done with it, they bring the glass jar back and they get their deposit back. And it's a model I love because it keeps customers coming back, so it makes economic sense. And we'd like to see more suppliers and end producers do that kind of thing. And just on the opposite token, we had a supplier that switched their packaging to plastic. It was eggs. We dropped them because it's important for our customers and us personally, on a personal level, that we not do something that's regressive. And so I like getting that feedback from customers. I hope everyone that's attending today tells their favorite local business, hey, here's some of my thoughts. Here's what I believe in, and make their voices heard, because it's important.
I love that. I think that's such a great point. We all have the capacity to make change, and we can all take action today. And I think it's really important that we do that. I think, like Emily said, anything that we take, that we make, and then just for the purpose of, holding in our hands for a few moments just to dispose of, is a complete waste of resources, of time, of money, of carbon emissions. And we need to just shift away from that system wherever possible. I think there was a point when we thought as well that, the material was the problem, and, recycling was the solution. And then innovation came in with, alternate materials that are biodegradable or compostable or eco-friendly. But most of these items actually have a higher carbon footprint, and they also can't be composted in the way that we know. They require industrial facilities and high temperatures and high oxygen inputs, and we just don't have that infrastructure available. And so for us, really, the most sustainable option is to reuse. And I think that if we can push for that, both, obviously, what you're doing as well, Depeche, is incredible. I can't wait for that zero waste ice cream, actually. But yeah, I think, congratulations on taking that step, listening to your customers, listening to the community, and really taking action yourself, because, you're definitely a leader in the space.
Oh,
I think ice cream sales are going to go up pretty significantly in the next little while.
I hope so,
honestly,
too.
I just started salivating when you were talking about that. Tina, I mean, you talk to a lot of people who are just regular customers. How are we doing getting them to be aware of innovations like what Adriana and Depeche are doing?
Yeah, I definitely see this as an important task of Runty Reduces, right? To get out the word any way where, as Adriana said, we can reuse. And it can be a small circle where you bring your own container and circle it home and wash it yourself, or if you order takeout, going through a bigger circle. But the circular economy is really a very hopeful term. And I mean, the city of Toronto has put it into the long-term waste management strategy a while ago, which is actually really exciting. But what it shows is it's such a strong culture of disposal in our society that it's not, even if you put this into your strategy and even if we all make an effort, it's not that quick. It's a huge cultural change. And that's why I feel like every step is important. So we support, for example, a little takeout dinner project called Runty Pickup, and they're like 3 chefs during the pandemic. They cook once a month a dinner, and you can get them that dinner in reusable containers. And yeah, it's just, I find it exciting. We usually don't do takeout, and I like to cook, and cooking is always actually a really good zero waste option. But we love that Runty Pickup, and it's cool. We have a family of 5, and we can have like a big dinner, and we bring our 6 containers or whatever back, and there's no waste, right? It is actually exciting and hopeful. And so I think any of these projects or startups like Adriana's, or even like the ice cream, it needs to be pushed, right? So people see that it's not only a burden, it's actually satisfying not to have the waste. It's positive, and the little convenience that we lose maybe is nothing compared to what we're gonna win. And the priority of convenience is anyway is just outdated, really, because there's bigger priorities that we have to work with, right? And so yeah, I find this is, for me, is really exciting that we feel like, okay, there is this daunting plastic in the air, in the water, everywhere, but there are people working on it, and we all can start using them and be part of this little circular economy and making it bigger, right? I mean, Loop is doing it right now with Lobless, and I haven't used it, but one of the Runty Reduces members is doing it. And so I called her yesterday actually to see how is it actually going with the Loop, and she's like, yeah, it's really great. They're constantly running out of products because there's a high interest, but she says it's really wonderful, and that there are more and more options to do this.
Something you said about convenience sort of knocked an old thing loose in my head. I can remember having milk in glass bottles delivered to my door when I was a little kid, right? I mean, where's this idea that throwaway packaging has made our lives more convenient? It just hasn't. Yeah. But Adriana said something that I'd love to hear some more thoughts on, maybe Emily or somebody else, which is sort of suggesting that maybe recycling or getting isn't the answer. Maybe recycling isn't all it's cracked up to be. Anyone got any thoughts on that? Emily, I'm gonna put some. Deepesh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say we deliver milk in glass bottles using a zero emission vehicle too. So we're happy to do that. you know, there's a bit of a behavior change, and our position is that you know, when people make those small incremental changes and discover these unique things about their neighborhood, for example, finding their coffee shop that uses a reusable coffee mug, um, it makes for a thriving neighborhood, and it's good for the soul. You know, I certainly encourage everybody here that if you make just one small change, you'll find out how much fun it is if you get to know your local shopkeeper and figure out what he's doing or what's his thinking. It'll feel good. You'll build a more thriving community. You'll build a cleaner community. And what Adriana is doing, what Tanya is doing, those are amazing things. And in fact, they're making such huge impacts to our city that you know, it's impressive. And you know, in a small way, we're glad to be a part of that.
Yeah, I like what you're saying. I mean, part of I think how we wound up here is you know, the businesses that we relied on got further and further and further away, so we can't actually talk to the people making decisions anymore, right? It used to be every neighborhood had its own theater, its own butcher. You know, there used to be soft drink bottle washing stations in just about every neighborhood. And as that goes further and further away, the connection between how we live our lives and who's deciding how we live our lives becomes almost invisible. But I don't want to lose. I asked Emily a question, and I'm not going to let her off the hook. Why isn't recycling the answer, Emily?
Well, so yeah, as I mentioned, you know, recycling is an important part of a circular economy. We need to know that when we're finished with resources, we don't want to just dispose of them. We want to repurpose them into something new. But the problem is that in our rush for convenience and in our rush to, you know, get goods as quick as possible to people, we've really focused on recycling. Recycling has almost become a sort of like a nicer garbage bin. So it's still part of this take, make, waste society. We get a material, there's a lot of resources and energy put into it. We have this material, and then we put it into a recycling bin, and it just goes away, and we're not really thinking about where that goes. And real effective recycling, you know, if you're actually breaking down a PET bottle and breaking it down into parts to make a new PET bottle, for anyone who's not a recycling geek, that's like a number one or number two, like, you know, a plastic bottle for a drink container. Those sorts of, like, that's real recycling, and that's valuable. But the problem is we've relied on recycling instead of other better policies, and we've allowed recycling to stand in for more important policies around reducing or refilling. And you know, we've probably all experienced it, but packaging has gotten so much more complicated over the last few years. Used to be glass bottles. Gord, you mentioned milk delivery. I remember bringing pop bottles back to the store for 10 cents. So I remember being excited, like collecting those and bringing them back and buying some candies with the money. And so as companies have gotten bigger and further away from the waste issue, and as they've been able to wash their hands of those things, and as Depeche mentioned, you know, all those costs of packaging and waste have just been offloaded onto the public and onto municipalities who have to pick up that recycling. Companies don't have to think about whether the container they make is recyclable anymore. So they just think about, does this look good? Does this sell more of my product? So a great example of that is, you know, those stand-up pouches. So you used to buy like frozen peas, and they would be in this sort of flat bag on the shelf in the freezer section. And now they're in these sort of zip top stand-up pouches that stand up on the shelf. And those companies specifically choose those because they stand up on the shelf and they can sell more product. But those types of containers have so many different types of plastic, they are not recyclable. So the problem is that the company faces no consequences for the fact that that container isn't recyclable. So that's why these new regulations at the provincial level and holding companies responsible for their packaging and recycling their packaging really needs to shift that system. So companies, if they made a stand-up pouch and they couldn't recycle it, they wouldn't be able to meet the regulations of collecting and recycling those materials. So recycling has been seen as like the main solution, and we really need to see it as the last solution, and we need to make sure that it actually works. It's a long answer, but I hope I got there.
No, thank you. That helped a lot. Tina, are you trying to say something? You got to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I wanted to add about the recycling of plastic. That plastic also recycles much worse than other materials, and that that the idea making a bottle into a bottle is one of the rare occasions, and the most plastic doesn't recycle well at all, and that's the reason why only 9% of plastics produced in Canada or that we have in Canada is being recycled, because it is actually it recycles much worse. If it would be easier, it would have happened, right? And that's an important problem, that plastic is not well recyclable, and it ends up in our landfills, and it is very persistent. It stays there for hundreds of years, and we don't even know. I mean, we say now it decomposes in 450 years if you have a polypropylene face mask, but those are all like estimates, right? Because it's all new stuff, and we are piling it up, and we don't even know how long it's going to be around, but we all won't be here for it, right, to see it. And so I think it's quite dramatic that we are using this substance we don't have a solution for.
Okay. It's 7:15. I'm going to give the panel one more question, and it's going to be kind of selfish. And then we'll throw it open for question and answers. So selfish question. Tell me what I should be doing differently as a member of Toronto City Council. What can Toronto City Council do to help get the policy changes you're talking about, or to support the neighborhood scale programs you're talking about? Tell me what to do. Who wants to go first? Okay, Adriana, jump in.
I think first and foremost, really adopting kind of an urgent approach to this is a great starting point. You know, we need to act now so that we can achieve our low carbon future. You know, 2050 is coming fast. We want Toronto to come out on top as a leader, meet their targets. And, you know, we know that single-use plastics and takeaway items are one of the main contributors of litter in the city. And we want to see 95% of waste diverted from landfills by 2050. So I think that that's a good starting point. Incentivizing the transition to reusable systems for small businesses would also be really helpful. You know, providing resources to help small business owners unpack and understand how to adopt sustainable practices into their current operations would be fantastic. You know, big corporations, chains, they have money, they have resources at their disposal, but really who's helping small business owners? And I mean, don't forget that these single-use items, they cost us all money. They cost the planet, vital ecosystems, they cost restaurants across Canada $620 million annually in disposable takeout packaging, and they cost us to manage the end-of-life waste management. So I think those are some, you know, good starting points, and also some public education. The safety of reusables comes up a lot for us. We know that reusables are absolutely safe, and that there's zero evidence that supports, you know, COVID, you know, being spread through reusables, but perhaps, you know, an official message or declaration of sorts, you know, from the City of Toronto might help ease the minds of anyone that still has lingering concerns about that. And I think just working together, you know, let's work together, supporting initiatives like ours, other reusable programs in the city as well. You know, we're all self-funded. We're also, you know, small businesses just trying to make a difference and create positive impact. So just let's work together.
Who's next? Oh, Depeche, you can't tell me what to do if you're muted.
Yeah, Adriana, I agree. And certainly what I'd like the city to do is just like, you know, the Not Amazon website, if the city can take a lead in organizing businesses, great small businesses, so they can enact some of these positive measures. Like, it would be totally awesome to say, hey, this is where you can drop off your returnable containers. These are the restaurants you can eat out. These are the companies that are trying to make a difference. And even it would be totally awesome if big, bold ideas could come out of this, such as why not provide funding, or in terms of a rebate, for glass washing machines or dishwashers. So companies, small businesses like ours can say, hey, yeah, we'll introduce a returnable glass program for our nuts or grains. Help us get that equipment so we can sanitize it and make it more widely available. So yeah, I'd like to see bold, big steps taken by the city.
Great, thank you. Tina, do you have any advice for me?
Yeah, sure. No, no. I was thinking of what Emily said earlier about what the city has done this study about with the people of Toronto about waste, and that actually the city came up with really a bunch of really great ideas how to move beyond the ban, the federal ban, and I think while the federal ban is awesome and should be welcomed by all of us, it is good if the municipalities themselves get to decide what if they're a product that are totally harmful and can't be used, that there should be regulations locally too. I mean, if the waste management ends up with a huge amount of, say, new single-use containers that are harmful and they have to deal with it and don't know and nobody wants them, then why should they be allowed, right? It should be local municipalities should look into or regulating waste too.
Thank you. In a second, I'm going to give Emily the last word and to give me my instructions. But before I do, what we're going to be doing next is going to you for your questions, your thoughts, and so on. And if you're not familiar with the platform, it offers a couple ways to let us know that you'd like to talk. One is you'll see there's a button that's got sort of a smiley face. If you click on that, it gives you the option to raise your hand. And that way, Dusha, who's sort of monitoring the chat for us tonight, will know you want to speak. Or you can type a question into the question and answer function, or just put something into the chat. So if you'll do that, while you're doing that, I'm going to let Emily give us a closing thought from the panel.
Great. Yeah, I'd love to tell you what to do. I think I appreciate like all the comments from the rest of the panel is fantastic, right? We need urgency, getting on with these great regulations that go above and beyond what other levels of government are doing, and supporting businesses. I think another one I'd like to add to the list is I think that the city can really lead by example. So I know passing new regulations and getting new programs to support businesses can take time, but the city of Toronto itself, as a corporation, spends a lot of money on materials every year. And the city of Toronto has childcare centers and long-term care homes and lots of facilities and lots of staff. And the city could really look at its own operations and phase out the purchase of single-use plastics in city operations. And I know the city of Markham has a policy so that all catering and events paid for by the city have to have no waste options, and they can't have, single-use disposables for any catering paid for by the city of Markham. I think the city could do that pretty fast, and that could really set an example and help in another way provide a lot of economic stimulus to all these other small businesses that are starting up to show alternatives. And I think that, followed by a whole lot of policies and programs, could be a really great way to push Toronto to the front and really show great leadership.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Emily. And thanks to all the panelists. Stick around, because I'm probably going to get questions I don't know the answer to, and I'm going to have to get you guys to answer them, okay? So now we're going to go to the question and answer period. And as we do, I want to welcome Annette and Michael from the City of Toronto Solid Waste Policy Department, who spend about 90% of their time solving problems for all the rest of us, and about 10% of the time answering questions from Emily. So with that, I'm going to ask Dusha, who works with me on environmental issues in my office. Who's got the first question here, Dusha?
Okay, so I've got two that have come in on the chat, so I'll ask the first one first. This was from Caroline. She was just asking, is there any advice about what we can do about plastic bottles specifically?
plastic bottles specifically. I don't know, Depeche, Adriana, Tina, I don't know if any of you offer plastic bottle programs. Depeche, you're muted. Yeah. Depeche, you have to unmute. I swear. Okay, go
Hey,
ahead.
sorry about that. Yeah, we used to take back plastic bottles and send them to TerraCycle, but that became very quickly difficult to manage just because we were getting a lot of it. Individuals can certainly sign up through TerraCycle's website to return some of those plastic bottles if they have a lot of it. But my suggestion is to try to reuse some of those plastic bottles. In our store and in others across the city, there are places where you can bring in your own bottles to refill detergents, soaps, laundry, things like that. So
Right. So use them for containers, not necessarily.
yeah, use them for containers. Yeah.
Right. Interesting. Anyone else in the panel have advice on this one? No?
Yeah, I
Oh,
might.
Tina, go ahead.
Yeah. So I think it really depends on what kind of system is set up. In Europe, there's places where they have a huge return system of plastic bottles. You can see it in every like grocery store, and you can feed basically the machine and get the money back out, which makes for a great recycling program of these PET bottles. But I agree that on long term, it's a material, as we talked about, that we don't know where it's going to go, even after it's being recycled a few times, right? So,
Yeah.
so setting up the system, but then working with the end amount of plastic that will occur is still a problem. So I find if the good thing about, I think what the benefit in Europe is that they have them all in one place. They don't get contaminated. They are all together, and then they're going all in to be refilled. This is a huge system to set up, right? Here in Canada, I think it's best to avoid it. You avoid them as much as possible. Like make your own kombucha if you need enough, and
That's a
there are
bit
other drinks
ambitious.
to make.
I saw Emily had her hand up.
Yeah, Tina, I'm glad you brought that up because a deposit system is actually, what we're talking about here for what like the Inuit program or the amazing ice cream that we all can't wait to try. Deposit systems are really shown like hands down around the world to be the best waste management system. So whether it is for refillables or whether it's for recyclables, deposits get you a really high return rate. And Ontario is one of the only 2 provinces in Canada that does not have a deposit return system for drink containers. So we see it with LCBO, alcohol containers and beer bottles, and they have really high return rates. And you compare that to any drink container that goes in the blue box, has about a 50% return rate. So we know that deposits work because there are multiple incentives to get things back. And Tina, as you mentioned, you get a cleaner waste stream. You don't get the contamination. And a deposit return system can work with glass or metal or plastic. So once you set up the infrastructure for a deposit return system, you can easily switch to more sustainable materials in the long term. But that's something I'd love to see happen in Ontario.
Great, thank you. Dusha, what's our next question?
So we have a question from Shelley. She says, the transfer of responsibility for recycling back to producers is always described as reducing costs for municipalities. How will Toronto's waste management system services change? How will any money saved be used to promote solutions to the same issues?
Well, first of all, it absolutely is about finances for municipal governments. I be real clear about that. In the old days, when waste management systems, when recycling and garbage collection was on a tax bill, you would actually have conservative politicians. I remember David Shiner, who would fight for reuse and for the province to take responsibility because it was eating up so much money. The next thing I would say is we are dramatically short of money within our solid waste system right now. We're getting advice from staff that a number of diversion programs, things like pre-processing waste before it gets disposed of to try to get that last bit of recycling out, is just too expensive. We can't afford to do it because we're spending so much money just managing the materials we have. And my real worry is if Toronto has to keep bearing all the costs that really are just the other side of the profits that packaging companies make, right? They make the profit, we pay the cost. Not really a triple P. Then the few systems that we do have in place, we won't even be able to afford them. And I'm worried we're going to start losing some of the recycling programs we've got in place, or some of the materials, depending on how the provincial regulations shake out. If we were able, though, on a social level, to remove all of the billions of dollars of cost annually for the city to run its collection program, the city to run its recycling facilities and disposal, if all of that disappeared socially, that's money that's available to invest in healthcare or education or making the transition to a low carbon future. The problem really is that all the things that we say we can't afford to do are actually unaffordable because we're wasting so much money providing back-end subsidy to big corporations. Sorry, I hogged that answer. Anyone else want to jump in? No? Maybe Dushi, next question.
I thought Annette was going to say something there. Am I putting you on
Oh,
the spot,
Annette, you
Annette?
had something?
I did have my hand up, but
Oh, I didn't
no, I
see
think Councillor Perks really outlined the current status, right? So, for example, just to give you some stats, we're currently aggregating our costs for 2020. So every year after we finish, we have to aggregate our costs and report it to the province in order to receive our stewardship funding. And in 2019 alone, it cost us the total cost of the program was $71 million. And as we know, how much net revenue we receive to help offset those costs is changing by the types of materials that producers are using. So as we've shifted, or as the materials that we've now are having no choice but to purchase have shifted to plastic, we've seen those revenue markets and those commodities change over time, so that system ultimately has got more expensive. It's more expensive to kind of identify those materials, properly sort them. It's confusing, and the costs continue to rise. So just to Councillor Perks's point, it is very expensive. What it looks like in the future, we're still waiting on a final regulation. So I think one thing to note to the group is, again, Emily outlined our really good current status. We've been waiting on regulations since the fall from the province. We've heard that we were supposed to get them in the fall, then by the end of the year, then by the beginning of the year, and we're pretty close to May. So I think, we're very, very eager to get those final regulations to move us into a newer state where producers are actually responsible and monetarily responsible for penalties if they don't meet certain targets. So we're seeking that with bated breath. So I think, again, just to the point of advocacy, something that you can do is not only talk to your councillors to make this known that, we want to see a new regulation come forward in this term of government, and also to your MPs, right? So, or your MPPs, because there's a, potential risk that if that doesn't come soon enough, that we might not realize that. And municipalities have invested a lot of work to prepare for this transition. We've got signals from the government that 2023 is supposed to be the transition date, and without a final regulation, that doesn't leave us a lot of time, or the producers, to prepare for that. So
yeah, I don't think people really realize how much Annette's team has to do at the back end for even the smallest change of what's coming at us from the front end. So not having that certainty, like what kind of, Do we have to buy trucks? I don't know, right? All of those kinds of questions are not things that we can turn on a dime. So what Annette said is very important. Let your MPP know we need that new producer pays system and we need it now. Yeah. What's next, Dusha?
Okay, so I'm gonna unmute Todd. Todd had raised his hand. So Todd, can you try now if your mic's working?
Hi,
Todd,
can you hear me?
Yeah. Hey, Todd, how are you?
Good. How are you, Gord?
Good, good, good. What do
See
you
you
got
all.
for us tonight?
I guess, well, I live in Parkdale, so I thought I would just give you a few comments and ask a question from my perspective. First of all, I guess regarding styrofoam and polystyrene, I'm just wondering how come it is taking so long for us to get to the point we're at now, where they're finally thinking of some of these products. Like, I know it's been an old argument, but I think they linked polystyrene to cancer like over 10 years ago. And I'm just wondering, why hasn't governments been able to just outright ban it?
Well, first of all, yeah, on styrene, no, it's not 10 years ago, it's like 50 years ago.
Yeah.
Like, we have always known that the styrene monomer, right? Polymer is the same chemical stuck together over and over again. We've known that's toxic forever. And that's, by the way, one of the other things with recycling plastics. A lot of what goes into plastics is not nice chemicals that you want to be working in a factory recycling.
Right.
But you asked why governments haven't done it. And it's real easy. It is real easy. And everybody here who's worked on trying to improve this will agree. You can take a great idea to the provincial government about making packages safer or better for the environment. But for every one of us that's going, there's some really high paid lobbyist from a really big industry who's going in the door right after us, and they get better access than we do.
Right.
So that's why I think what, Tina and Depeche and Adriana are doing, building that power on the ground by letting people see how simple the solutions are. That's why that's important. But also what Emily was saying is, until we solve this problem, part of your job every night is going to be taking stuff out to your blue bin or your garbage can. Maybe just every time you do that, send an email to your member of provincial parliament. And eventually you won't have to do either of those things because we'll solve both problems.
Right. And just a couple quick comments. It would be great if some of the panelists could come to Parkdale as well, down on Queen Street. Like, I've gone around to a few of the restaurants with the new compostable containers and tried to get some of the restaurant owners to take them on instead of the styrofoam. And they sound interested and concerned, but they haven't made that switch yet. So maybe with some more education and some more options that are affordable for them, that, and we could show them that it's affordable, they might make the switch.
I think Tina's got something to say to you.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up, Todd, because we've been talking about our Parkdale neighbors for a while, and Emily and I have been talking before, and together with Queen City, that really, if we sit in Roncesvalles so close to Parkdale, and there's a lot of interest there too, we should expand and do this together.
For sure.
And we were basically hoping for the end of the pandemic to tour restaurants and start asking them, but the Parkdale Hall already wanted a sticker, so you can get your coffee cup. You can bring your own coffee cup there. But yeah, it's a good inspiration and a good reminder, and that's definitely on our plan to expand and do that together with any interested Parkdale community member.
Do I have permission to give you two each your email addresses?
For sure.
All right, look at that. We just did some community organizing right here.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Emily?
Adriana, if you want to do it.
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly add something to that because I think it's really fantastic that you want to see this in your neighborhood and in your community. But I just want to kind of bring us back to this idea that anything that we that we manufacture, process, transport, distribute, retail, just to use for moments, we need to shift away from that model. And so although that there are these new products on the market that are compostable and biodegradable, they seem to be more environmentally friendly, but they often do have a higher carbon footprint. And we don't have the proper facilities to be able to break these down currently. We don't have that infrastructure. And so they can be quite harmful to the environment. And also they can disrupt batches of recycling because they're often mistaken, for just regular old plastic and thrown into the recycling bin as well. So I think we really need to shift away from anything that's single use and move towards circularity and reuse programs as much as possible, whenever possible, whether that is, a BYO, program or, one of the incredible reusable programs all across the city. I think we really need to shift our focus to reuse as much as possible.
Good point. That's important to remember, but we're all learning from each other here.
Yeah.
A funny story on that. So back when I was doing Emily's job and the world was much younger, the thing that was all the rage was photodegradable plastic that would break down just because of sunlight. And I happened to know there was a really progressive waste management leader, city of Guelph, Dan. And Dan went out and nailed a bunch of these photodegradable plastic bags to a tree in his backyard. This was 25 years ago. And by chance, I was talking to him about a year ago. They're still there. So a lot of these technologies that supposedly solve our problems have a lot to do with keeping market share, not necessarily about sharing the planet. What do we got next, Dusha?
Okay, so we have a question from Grant. So Grant, I've just unmuted you. Could you trust your microphone?
Yeah, it's okay.
Hey, Grant, how are you?
Good. How are you, Gord?
I'm good.
Great. I have just one quick question regarding the city, and then maybe a little comment about the single use. I was involved in a public consultation about a year and a half ago called Transform TO. That was a program that the city was launching.
Yeah.
This was pre-pandemic, and it was really big. And I think waste was included in that program. I was wondering if you guys could comment about that program. And the other thing I wanted to mention was the single use. There is a lot of great stuff coming from Asia around single use using plant products like leaves that are naturally biodegradable that I would love to see here.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks for that. I'm just going to give a quick thing on Transform TO and then see if Annette has anything she wants to add. So Transform TO was actually something that we worked on all the way back into the last term of council. And it was a great program, and we identified some key areas: transportation, heating buildings, and solid waste as the big three where we really had to make a difference if we're going to meet our climate change goals. A lot of the staff work that was taking place on this sort of got frozen for the last year. We had to reassign city staff from programs like that to a lot of the pandemic response. So it got held up for pretty much a year. We're expecting to hear back in the next few months with an update. Annette, are there pieces around this in your shop that you can report on?
No other updates than you provided, but just a note to the group that we definitely work really closely with, it's actually in a different section called the Energy and Environment Division, and we work together with them on a number of portfolios, including our waste programming, as well as our renewable natural gas work and those outcomes, as well as circular economy. So I heard CE mentioned a whole bunch of times tonight. So that's really great that you guys are so well informed on the circular economy. And so, yeah, those two groups work together quite closely, and I'm sure that when they update, we'll be feeding into that as well with any of our actions that support that plan.
And just a final thing, the single most energy intensive product on the market for packaging is aluminum. Aluminum is an energy monster. Don't use it. Use glass. Just thought I'd say that. Dusha, what do we got next?
Okay, so we have a question from Anita. Anita, I've just unmuted you.
Okay, hi, thanks, Dusha. I have actually a suggestion and a question.
Great.
I suggest that, I think the city needs to do a bit more public education on what plastics are recyclable. A lot of people look at the bottom of the plastic and look at the triangle, and they assume with that triangle there that plastic's recyclable, but it's not, right? I think I'm hearing only maybe 1 or 2 recyclable. So if they hear that the vast amount of plastic is not recyclable, there may be more, not outrage, but more concern among the public to do more about it. And the other question I have is, it's discouraging to hear that Canada only recycles 9% of plastic, and I was wondering if we know how much the City of Toronto actually recycles in terms of the plastics waste that's collected from the Lubin.
Okay, I have thoughts on that, but I'm going to actually turn you over to an expert. Annette, do you have answers there?
I don't have the numbers. I don't have the numbers offhand for the stats of plastic recycling. I have to get back to you. The one thing to note is on the 9%, that is like everything. So in the city, we're definitely doing better than 9%. So I would take that just with some consideration that includes anything like businesses that currently might not be in compliance with some regulations that they need to be meeting, and the lack of more progressive standards that they might have and the opportunity that they have to recover more plastics. So that could be extended to not only big business, but plastics and auto manufacturers and things like that. So that 9% is really based on all plastics produced in Canada, and definitely the cities would be much higher than that in terms of our recovery. I agree with the group that the recycling is at the bottom after reduction. But one of the things that I think, being in the industry for a while, that is kind of unique to our region is that we've been able to maintain our markets on the plastics that we've been able to recover. So when the city makes a decision to add an item to the recycling bin, we often look for things that have stable long-term markets. And what I mean as a region, we've been a little bit special is that I think because of where our placement within the middle of the country, we've developed this kind of micro plastics reprocessing market. So we have more local markets for some plastics reprocessing, which has allowed us to be a little bit more resilient. That being said, we don't want to recycle more plastic. We want to receive less waste overall, right? Like the goal is always reduction, but that's kind of just a little bit of extra information on plastics and recycling in the city.
Annette, can I just ask you, for the puzzled, trying to work out which plastics is recyclable and go in your bin, what are the best resources the city has?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, absolutely. And I'll put them in the links as well. So we have a number of them. So we have the Waste app, which would be on your phone. You can download the Waste app. You can type in any kind of product, and then it will tell you which bin it goes into. If you don't want to download the Waste app, you can also go online, and there's a Waste Wizard that has a similar function where you can type in that product, and it does come up with pictures, I think, online right now. We're working on that upgrade for the app, but it will be a little bit of time. The next thing, probably not surprising to you, at my desk here, I always have my waste calendar. So that's another easy tool, and there's an insert inside that tells you what you can recycle and what goes where. And if you also prefer, 311 at any point in time can also help you out in a number of languages as well. So there's a number of options. And if you're living in a multi-res building that has the opportunity of having a 3Rs ambassador, they could also be a reference for you.
Great, thank you. I think we got time for one or two more. Dusha? Oh, sorry, Tina. Tina, you've got something to say.
Yeah, just very quick, because Grant suggested the banana leaves for instead of plastic, which is fun. Bananas don't grow here, as we know, but you can actually use like cabbage leaves, right? I mean, like if you have a cabbage and you use only half of it, you can cut it, and instead of putting cling wrap on it, you just use one of the outer leaves and put it on top, and I swear it works. I do it all the time. It keeps it fresh, right? So you don't have to go to bananas, and but it's great to bring that up. That biodegradable stuff.
You've got a lot of
Real
fans in
plant
the
stuff
chat.
is-
You've got a lot of fans for this idea in the chat. That's great. I never thought of that. Okay, I have a new waste reduction tip at home. Dusha,
Okay.
got another question for us?
Yes, we do. So I have Angela. Angela, I've just unmuted you.
Hi, Angela.
Hey,
How you
Me?
tonight?
is it me? I don't know if I am unmuted. Hey guys, how's it going?
Good, good.
I didn't even realize I put up my hand, but this is awesome. So I'm actually launching something called the Restaurant Evolution, and the aim is to put immunity on the menu using local food-based food fixes. But I also want to help consult these restaurants to systematically reduce their impact. And so I'm like in that, there's like you guys posted the pictures of all the stuff that's like the biggest contributors, and they're all like restaurant stuff, like single forks and stuff like that. But what would be like, I obviously would love to have zero waste. We just don't have the infrastructure for that right now. But like, where can I find the best resources to reduce wasteful packaging? Because I know that there's all the greenwashing, like the biodegradable stuff isn't really biodegradable. And do you guys have any answers for that?
So are you talking about for the restaurant industry
Yes.
or at home?
Yes. Well, the problem is at home too, but I mean for the
Yeah.
for the restaurant industry, because I feel like they're a huge contributor, and it's like who is actually responsible. So making the consumer responsible, but also helping them reduce their impact through the takeout solutions, because that's where everybody's going these
For the
days.
takeout, right?
Yeah.
Well,
takeout.
I mean, Adriana's got a pretty good program, and she's put her contacts. You put your contacts in the chat, right? Yeah.
I did, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Depeche is a good resource, and Tina's a good resource. So you got three wonderful resources right here. It's not something where there's an easy ready-made. And that's part of the problem with this, is that the systems keep changing, the materials keep changing, and that's why trying to build a coalition like we're doing here tonight really matters. So do I have your permission as well to share your information with the panelists so that we can put people together and have that conversation? Angela? Oh, I hope it didn't scare you off.
Thank you guys. Am I muted again? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I also am a consultant on behalf of Oceania Global, and you guys
okay.
might want to reach out to them, because they actually have a systemized process of how to help consult these bigger organizations in reducing their impact, but actually giving measurable results. And it's like, oh, so now you're sustainable, or like you get 2 stars. And that's something I want to implement too. So it's like, there's some incentive for them to be doing this, and recognition, right? Like rewarding positive behavior. Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We have time for one last question or comment. Dusha?
Okay, so I've unmuted Tierney.
Hi, thanks. So
Hi.
Hi, everybody. So first off, I want to just say thank you so much for the work that you guys do. It's amazing, and it is urgent. My question for you is, right now, I'm sure you've noticed people aren't at their highest level of motivation because of a lot of things happening in the world. So what keeps you motivated and inspired? Where do you look? Is it other municipalities or other countries? what's that sort of glimmer of hope for all of us who are here wanting to make that call or send that email?
What a perfect question to end on. Okay, I'm just going to go around the panel one at a time and just get them in 1 or 2 sentences. Tell me what's inspiring. And Annette, I'm going to ask you too. So start getting your answer ready. I'll start with Tina. Tina, what keeps you going?
I think nature keeps me going. Nature takes care of us, and we need to take care of nature. That's a wonderful reason for all of us, and very necessary. And we can't leave nature to digest these incredible amounts of plastics anymore. That's
Beautiful answer. Beautiful. Depeche, what keeps you motivated?
Our customers keep us motivated. My son keeps me motivated. You know, sometimes I feel like I'm living a childhood fantasy. I feel like I'm Mr. Grocer on Sesame Street, where I know everybody in the neighborhood. Yeah, you know, as much as sometimes things seem discouraging, when I meet someone that cares, it's inspiring, and I don't want to discount that, you know, whatever you feel. You know, if you just walk into a store like ours or any other store and you just express your opinions, it makes an impact. So keep talking, keep doing what you're doing, and you know, there's awesome people just like, you know, the other panelists here that are making a huge change in the city, and we applaud that, and I'm happy to be a small part of that. So yeah.
Wonderful. Lovely. Adriana.
Oh, it's a hard question because I feel like I'm inspired by a lot of things. So I feel you, Tina. I'm inspired by, you know, the planet and nature, and also, you know, everyone who's doing the incredible things out there. But I would also say I'm inspired by just wanting to create a better world for future generations. I think that that's what keeps me going every day is, you know, we weren't just gifted this from our ancestors, but we're borrowing it from them. And so making sure that we leave it a better place than we found it, and just making sure that, you know, they have the resources that they need to move forward. That's kind of what keeps me inspired every day.
Thank you. Annette, why on earth do you go to work every day as a public servant?
I love garbage. I love it. I hate it, but like I hate it because you have to deal with it, but you have to deal with it. So I'm inspired by community and local level, community level action, and also individual action. So I follow a lot of you know, waste related social media accounts and stuff like that. And I also post, right? So if I pick up litter, I post, and then I, you know, start creating that community of like, you know, someone in Japan is also posting pictures of litter and making it something that's unfortunately something too pretty to look at, but bringing new causes to it in a different and inspiring way. So I think when I see those kinds of individual actions and then the community level action that we're seeing here today, I find that really inspiring, because it's like the work that we want to achieve as a city, and having you guys all be a part of it is super inspiring for me. So thank you so much for the work that you guys.
Emily?
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said. You know, nature and community and talking to other people who are waste nerds is really fun. You know, as someone who gets really down into the policy and the complex issues of these huge systems, you know, can be really overwhelming. Like I also find it so invigorating to talk to other people who are excited and have these great ideas. And I really want to remind everyone that, like, this is a really big problem, and don't be hard on yourself. Be kind to yourself, be kind to others. We can't turn this like plastics problem into an individual guilt thing where it's like about, you know, don't beat yourself up if you have to take a plastic bag from the store because you're in a rush and it's raining and you got to carry the stuff home. Like, we're doing our best, and dragging ourselves down with guilt is just going to stall the whole thing. So stay inspired, stay focused on the solution, and like look at all the people around you that want to work on solutions too. And I think that's what keeps me excited.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Listen, gang, I want to thank you all. Honestly, what keeps me going is panels like this. You guys have been fantastic tonight. And to all the people who've provided questions and comments, you've been fantastic tonight. It's work like this that, you know, inspires me to run for office and keep holding these meetings. So thank you all. Thank you for the work you're doing. I think we've actually made some good connections tonight to expand the work, and that's the exciting thing. So everybody, go enjoy the rest of your evening. Stay healthy and keep strong, and we will make this a better planet. Have a good night.
Thanks so much.
Good night. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Good
Bye,
night.
everyone. Cheers.